Welcome to Learn or Be Learned. We either learn from others or others learn from us. The former is able to help us become a better, faster you. Follow me weekly as I dig up stories like a true anthropologist would on one of the three series called Guest Conversations, Book Applications, or My Small Talk Explorations. I'm your host, Shiva Danshaker, and let's talk. Welcome back, friends. So this is episode 50. Wow, I can't believe we did it. And I just want to say thank you all for the support so far. It's been incredible, and I'm so excited to see where this takes us in the many episodes to come. So before we get right into it, I just wanted to say I have a special surprise for you guys at the end of this episode. So stay tuned and keep watching, and I am so happy to have you guys here, and let's get right into it. So here's 11 things I learned from 50 episodes. 1. You don't need to be passionate, at least at first, but you do need to be purposeful. So if you want to hear more on passion, I actually have a small talk episode on episode 38 about passion and really just finding your contribution, because passion can be kind of gimmicky and it's not really something you should be searching for. It is actually something that is a byproduct of what you do. So you should be focusing on contribution. So if that sounds interesting and you haven't checked that out, episode 38 is a great one. And episode 36 is kind of where that stemmed from. That inspiration for 38 came from episode 36. The book called Life's Great Question, Discover How You Contribute to the World by Tom Rath. Anyways, I want to talk about, how you should be finding the purpose of why you're starting whatever content you're making, whatever you're doing out there. It should be with purpose. Don't go for passion, because I think that was part of my problem was I don't know if I'm passionate about this, but then I realized passion comes as you grow, not from the start. You might have enthusiasm at the beginning, but don't confuse that for passion, because passion is different. Passion is what drives you to keep going when realistically it seems like you shouldn't, because you are seeing slow growth or whatever, right? So when you start whatever you're doing, whatever content you're making, YouTube, TikTok, podcasts, whatever, ask yourself these two questions. Why are you doing this? And are you okay with this taking many, many years before seeing progress? And let's say you're doing a podcast with two people, right? You need to be very clear with each other if you are okay with it taking like 10 years, right? You don't want someone who flakes after a few months of doing a podcast. It just ends up not working out in your favor. So you need to be clear about this. And all these 11 things is honestly from personal experience over the last 14 months of doing these content creations. And honestly, maybe even 3 more months. You can tack on another 3 months to that, because it took me about 3 months to prepare. So about 15 months of all this is what I've learned, right? So, and I know many of us have other things to do. So that's why I say it might take you years. If you have unlimited time, then yeah, maybe you can get this in a year. I know Brian Young, I've talked to him. He's a YouTuber and he's got like over 1 million subscribers. He literally got there in like around a year. He actually started making content on a very popular topic, cryptocurrency. So his, subscriber count grew quickly. Everyone's got their own pace. So, and I think another thing to address is sometimes you might be like, oh man, why didn't I start earlier? Why didn't I start in high school? Why didn't I start in college when I had more time? But honestly, I was thinking the exact same way, but then I realized everything happens for us, not to us. Perhaps the reason it worked out the way it did is because you needed certain experiences, or you needed to talk to certain people, or find certain topics, right? Or certain interests grew over time in your life. These are all contributing factors to why things might have happened the way they did, so you could get to the point where you are. 2. Keep it vague or go all in on your niche. I went with keeping it vague, which in my opinion was better for me because I didn't know exactly what I wanted. I knew I wanted a Joe Rogan style podcast where I could talk to anyone about anything. So I made it vague. Lo and behold, here we are. Learn or be learned. It's about learning. A lot of podcasts are very specific. A lot of YouTube channels are very specific. But let me give you an example of how my podcast title and concept came to be. When I was brainstorming, I was thinking of doing a podcast strictly on books. In fact, it was going to be called Books, Reading and Analyzing. But I realized, what if I wanted to do movies or documentaries? But now I've constrained myself to books, right? So I like the idea of going vague because then you can narrow it over time as you find more and more interests you like. Now, if you already know your niche and you know your interest and you're going to jump in, by all means, go with what you want. But in my opinion, I think even, let's say you want to do a Star Wars podcast, I think even going vague on that would be great too, right? Instead of saying, this is the Star Wars podcast, you could even say, this is, the podcast where we analyze movies or shows or whatever, right? So, and if you keep it vague, then maybe season 1 you do Star Wars and then season 2 you do Star Trek, right? So you can do it and then season 3 compare them both, like you give yourself more options when you leave it more vague. And I think that's honestly the way to go, but it's up to you. And also, I realized I'm starting to move towards more scholars and academics, like professors and such. But, I still have guests. Like, for example, a guest I just interviewed, spoiler alert, this podcast will come out soon, is Bruce Sackman, who is a former special agent who solves medical related serial killings. And it was a super awesome talk. This is just my words of advice, but 3. Start slow and strong, but perfection is not your friend. Honestly, I would start slow, right? So nobody knows you're starting, so you kind of have that time on your hands. So I would determine a launch date, and then 2 weeks before launch, if you're ready, key is if you're ready, share with this on your medias, right? Facebook, whatever, TikTok, and say that you're launching and this is going to come out, and people will anticipate that. So what you should do before you're ready on that launch date, in my opinion, is create 3 pieces of content. So if you're a musician, 3 songs. If you're a YouTuber, 3 videos. If you're a podcaster, 3 episodes, etc. Create a website, a link page, so something like Linktree or solo.to, which is what I use, and make a blog. Honestly, I wish I had made a blog sooner. Oh, and I also almost forgot. Make a system. This might honestly be one of the most important things I say in this number 3 point, right? You want to make a system, something that is organized, that has all your content, notes, pictures, graphics, ideas, captions, videos, everything that you got needs to be in an organized system, and keep it. And the way you should make it is by keeping in mind that this will one day have to hold a big team worth of people, right? So when I started making my system, I kept in mind that this will one day be a larger team. So how can I make it in a way where I can just add people to my system and boom, we're ready to go. But what I did wrong was I made the system too intricate. You need to make it with ease, something that makes it easy for you to access, easy for you to, drag and drop all your content. I initially started with a hard drive, which is fine if it saves you some money. And that's another thing, right? Save money where you can, at least when you're starting. I switched to a cloud-based service so I could add people to it a lot easier. And what ended up happening was, because my system was so difficult, I stopped using it. So next thing you know, I'm at episode 50, and it takes me 3 straight 10-hour days to clean up my mess of episode 1 to 48, because I had captions in my several different notes. I had, podcast cover pictures here and there. I had socials all over my photo album on my phone, and everything was just an absolute mess. And I'm still not done, but I did majority of it in 3 days because my team is slowly growing, and I realized I needed some more cohesive organization so I could just share files and folders. But, learn from my mistake and start strong with your system. Something easy, something simple, and something that you can consistently do that you won't break. 4, eventually you're going to have to jump. So this is kind of self-explanatory, right? You'll get nervous, fearful, you'll think others are going to judge you, but honestly, at least at first, you're going to receive a lot of encouragement. And those who really are judging you are going to do quietly from the safety of their screens. and you're going to be invited with so much positive responses. But keep in mind, it will taper off. So you have to have the motivation within. It should not be external and seeking. But yes, jump. You will never be 100% ready, and perfection is not your friend. In fact, I would go as far to say that it gets much, much better over time, and you start to look like it's becoming, quote unquote, perfected. But just start. When you have something decent, just start. 5. Start a social media presence. Whether that's a new account or your original account is up to you, but remember point 2. Why are you doing this? I went with my personal account, right? So my personal Instagram is where I started building my brand and stuff because I wanted it to build a brand around me, not just the podcast. Because let's say I switch to a different podcast in a few years, or let's say I make a talk show on my YouTube where I, do absolutely something different. I want people to follow me, not just my content, because they like my perspective or my personality on that content. So if I had made an individual Instagram for Learn or Be Learned and I, after 6 years that stops and I'm making a new podcast, then I have to start over. That or I have to be like, hey guys, follow my new page. Like, oh, this one's done because Learn and Be Learned is done. So you got to think proactively with these type of things. And I decided to just go with my personal account. This is a personal choice, but that's what I went with. 6. Don't get caught up in the numbers. Remember the questions I asked you at the beginning. Why are you doing this? And are you okay with this taking years? I really made sure to follow this rule from day one. It can be hard to not look at the numbers. I mean, it's literally right in front of you and almost unavoidable, right? So, for example, when I'm publishing a new podcast episode, it takes me to the database where you can see all the numbers. And what ends up happening is you take a quick glance and you see, oh, this one's doing great. This one's not doing great. And it starts to put you in this loop. It's almost like with money, right? You detach your emotional state from the numbers, not just financial numbers, but even numbers in the content game. So don't get discouraged, right? And let me tell you why. This is a multivariant problem. So to think that it's a reflection of you or your work is extremely pernicious to your momentum by assuming it's some sort of univariate analysis of your work, which is just simply not true. If you cannot take the emotions out of the numbers, I would say wait until you can, or wait until you have a data analyst who can more objectively understand the dips and variations in your numbers. Also, trends require a larger sample size, so although the number may be subjective to its platform or medium, I would say you can kind of tell when you're too early to start analyzing these numbers versus when you think there is enough numbers. So, for example, there's a lot more people on YouTube right now than there are on podcasts. So the YouTube numbers might be higher, right? So a low average viewer count might be 100 for YouTube, but 100 for podcasts would put you in the top several percent, right? So 7, accept that you are at the beginning and that your beginning work doesn't have to be your best. So my work is constantly adapting, changing, and I'm trying new things. I even changed up one of the structures of one of my book episodes. I wanted to try something different and see how I felt about it, if I liked it and whatnot. And then after I made it, I realized I don't think I really like this structure. And then I got some feedback and I realized people were on the same page with me. So I reverted back to my old structure for the book episodes. So remember to keep an open mind and keep trying new things when you're making your content, right? Explore. That's literally the fun part of what you're doing because you get to put your own unique spin on it. So, remember, explore, try new things, be different. You don't have to stick to the cookie cutter. This is how a podcast goes. Who cares, right? So 8, get comfortable with rejection, getting ghosted, critiques, but block out the noise. I've heard hate, love, encouragement, constructive criticism, and honestly, even jealousy from my work. And it's a part of the process. So you want to be comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable. That is when you're going to see the biggest rewards. I know it's not easy. I mean, I'm still trying to get into YouTube. And I think somewhere for me, there is this rooted insecurity, the same insecurity that made me not want to start my podcast because I was scared of what people would say and think. And, from experiences of what people have said and think, that made me not want to do it, right? So But I would say after, over a year of this, I'm so glad I jumped. I'm so glad I jumped and started the podcast, which is why I'm going to do the same thing with YouTube soon enough. So stay tuned for that. But, it's not easy. I get it. I get it. People, you don't want people to judge you. You don't want close family members, close friends to tell you, like, to see you, mess up, see you be cringy, see you fail, see you say something stupid, look stupid, whatever it is, right? But I often even hear, people that are kind of close to me. I've heard people say, no, I don't really want to like share this on my media. I don't want people to know that I do this. Not because I like, I'm feeling any kind of way or whatever. It's just because I don't want that. And, if they really looked introspectively, I would have to say at least there's got to be, at least a small percentage of a reason. One of those reasons, even if in the smallest sense, would have to be insecurity, right? It's just how it is. And I mean, I think the dumber thing here is to, remain silent and not know at least what if, right? Because that is what drives me at the end of the day. I don't want to look back and say what if and live an unfulfilled life of not at least trying everything my heart beats faster for. And I promise you, if you keep up with it and you just say screw it, I'm going to start, you will thank yourself years down the road. I promise. Because if this, and let's say even if this wasn't meant to be and you dropped it or you found something different or whatever, you will have gained something more implicit than you may even notice, which is courage, confidence, humility, you know? So really, I know that was a long one, but like, I really want to stress this one. These 11 lessons I learned are so important, and it's life changing. Really, it really changes who you are and your perspective and your confidence and your personality. Really, 9, the smoke and mirror phase. Some people will show so much enthusiasm only to flake on you, not to listen or talk behind your back. But it's okay. Don't blame them. Just understand the nature of this circumstance exists. You are doing this for you. Remember the 2 questions I asked at the beginning. Why are you doing this? And are you okay with this taking time? 10, believe in yourself. That is all that matters. So there's this quote by Steve Martin, and he says, be so good they can't ignore you. Right? So believe in yourself. Be so good they cannot ignore you. So if you keep trying and perfecting your craft, and after 10,000 hours, like I said from Malcolm Gladwell's Outlier book, after 10,000 hours of working on your craft, it took you 8 years, 10 years, whatever, you will be so much better at your craft that people just cannot ignore it. But that requires, like what I said from 7, is accept the beginning that you won't be your best. And, like how I like to keep adapting and trying and changing, right? You have to keep trying and changing because that is how you perfect your craft. You keep trying new things. And as you keep doing that, you have to believe in yourself, because there was a lot of points where I felt kind of, why am I doing this? Oh, this isn't doing so well. Like, I lost a lot of people. Nobody listens, blah, 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 right? You have all these negative talks in your own head telling you, why are you doing this? That is why I ask these questions. Why are you doing this? And if you're wondering why I'm doing this, because I never answered that at the beginning of this podcast episode, I will answer it at the end. But that wasn't the surprise I'm going to bring up anyways. All right, so here's number 11. Remember to have fun. Right? So that's it. Just remember that this is your work that you do on your accord, because you are your own boss. So if you don't want to do anything for 2 weeks, take off. If you don't want to release an episode because it doesn't reach the standards of your liking, cut it. You have full autonomy of what you're doing. That's the best part of doing this, right? You get to say what you want and what you don't want. Don't stress about it. I think every content creator goes through this where they think, oh no, if I stop posting for 2 weeks, nobody's gonna watch anymore. Everyone's gonna lose interest. Not true. Not true at all. Now, I will say if you go on like a 6 or 8, week or 2 months, 3 months vacation, which I have done, I've gone on a few week trip to India, I think a while back. And what I did was I made a couple more episodes in advance and then I scheduled it. so it would still, go around a consistent time, because I felt as though maybe 8 weeks was too long to go without my listeners, but 2 weeks isn't going to hurt you. So, all right. So before we wrap this up and before I share the big news, I just want to say that I really appreciate you guys for listening. And I really, really appreciate the support that I get and the feedback and everything. So thank you guys so much for listening. And, if you're on Spotify, please scroll down so you see the little prompts, and if you could answer that, that'd be great. If you guys could leave me a review on Spotify or Apple or both, that would be absolutely amazing. I have a lot of exciting things coming in the next several weeks to months, so please stay tuned with me, and I'm really excited to go on this journey with you guys. And okay, all right, all right, all right. I'll stop stalling. Okay, so before I tell you the big news, I will say this. Let me answer that question. Why are you doing this, and are you okay with doing this for many, many years before seeing progress? One, why are you doing this? Why am I doing this? I honestly, at first, I really didn't know. So this all started because when the pandemic hit, I was just like many others in a bad spot. I lost a lot of opportunities. I lost this position to work at the CDC, and it was devastating. I lost my honors thesis in anthropology. I lost I lost my chance to go to Los Angeles and present my findings in Kenya, my biological anthropology findings that I did, my abstract and everything on my project. So I lost all these opportunities. Not to mention, I later even dropped pre med, which I did for 4 years. And I didn't know what I was doing. It took me a few months. I think I just literally stayed in bed and watched Netflix for a few months. But I did start listening to podcasts and riding a bike to keep my, fitness up. And that's when I started finding personal development and stuff like that. So, in fact, my first ever podcast I started listening to was Dean Graziosi, which I don't really listen to anymore, but he's kind of the guy that got it started for me. So I started listening to Dean, and I realized, okay, well, I like these podcasts, right? And then next thing you know, my religion professor tells us in class, Spirituality, Drugs, and Religion, which was an awesome class by Gary Latterman. And he says, I'm going to be on the Joe Rogan show. And then and then a light bulb went right in my head. And I go, just an ordinary person can be on Joe Rogan's podcast. Can't just an ordinary person start? So, fast forward a couple months and here we are. And that's why I had Gary as my first guest, actually. He was the person where I had come up with that light bulb idea. So I just felt it was symbolic to have him as my first guest on episode 3, which is an awesome episode. You should check that out. It's totally different than where I am now. So, quality is very different, but it was awesome. So why am I doing this? And it's because I love to learn. Apparently, I have a radio voice. And why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I like to learn, and I just want to share. I enjoy it. I enjoy sharing. I enjoy putting my creative spin. I'm good at growing things. I'm good at seeing big pictures, and I like that. I can think 15 years ahead. And although I won't share my visualizations because, maybe superstition and whatnot, and evil eyes and all that, but I'm really good at thinking ahead, and I'm really good at I'm really good at thinking big picture. And I have a lot of fun creating an, aesthetic, artistic spins on certain things. I just like to think outside the box and try new things. So that's why I do it. And maybe that's not a good enough answer. Maybe I'll re-answer this question in another year, another 50 episodes or something. But that's just what I've come to for now. And that's honestly, I didn't script that. I didn't script a lot of these. I do have bullet points and stuff. I didn't script it. This is literally just from the dome, right? This is just from my head. So, and am I okay with doing this for many, many years? Yeah, okay. That one's self-explanatory. Otherwise, I wouldn't have started because my viewerships were low, just like anyone would expect when you first start. So, and there's a lot of ups and downs. I was sad. I was, sometimes you think, why am I going through all this work, right? Like, nobody even wants to watch, blah, blah, blah. You get all these negative talks in your head. So, am I okay with doing this for many, many years? I'm totally okay with it. Although I will say, if you're starting and this will take many, many years for you, I would say don't make this your plan A. I would strengthen your plan A, your foundation of what else you're doing, and keep doing this because one day it will click. Lastly, here's the big news that I was going to tell you guys. If you head over to my Instagram, on my stories, you will see what you need to do to enter to win one of Gary's new books called 12 and a Half: Leveraging the Emotional Ingredients Necessary for Business Success. And this is one of his new books. There will be 11 winners, and I'm really excited. I'll ship it out for free. All you got to do is, follow what's on that story. And, as long as you're still in the duration that you're watching this, I think that I'll do this for maybe 2 or 3 days. I'll give you guys maybe 3 days to do the raffle, whatever, and I will send it out. And that's just more of a little celebration and a little thank you for people that are watching and watch these episodes. So, once again, thank you all so much. And if you have any unique guests you want me to interview or books you want me to read and stuff like that, please, shoot me an email or a text or Instagram DM or something. There's many ways to contact me, usually in the podcast descriptions. And if you're looking for the Instagram link, it will be in the podcast description, or you can look up at Shivadhana, SHIVADHANA. So, anyways, thank you for listening to this super long episode. But honestly, this is a little different. This is definitely more real than most. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Bye.